To tell us a little bit more on the economic front, our economics desk is going to be joining us for that discussion. Reporter Naledi Ngcobo joins us. Naledi, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me.
So it has been an illustrious week, to say the least, just in terms of what is happening in South Africa, questions about VAT. You're obviously looking at budget constraints. But for this week, CPI numbers are set to come out in March. We're looking at issues of inflation. Tell us a little bit more about that on that front.
All right, Liesl, we're definitely expecting the inflation number to come out next week, particularly on Wednesday. Inflation has fairly been under control as far as the Reserve Bank is concerned. So it remains below the 4.5 midpoint, which is the target that's set by the Reserve Bank, and largely within the 3 to 6% target range. So inflation has been quite low in South Africa, but of course there are a number of factors that could actually affect inflation. We do understand that what's happening in the U.S. in terms of the tariffs, the increase in trade wars could make an impact in terms of the inflation outlook. But we've definitely seen that the rand has taken a bit of a beating, so we might have inflationary effects coming from the rand, which would obviously then affect prices severely. But we've also seen a recovery in the rand, so inflation stays abated at the moment, and so we'll be looking out to see what those numbers look like when they come out this week.
All right, thank you for speaking to that. There's also been very high-level meetings with business and various other stakeholders. Obviously, as South Africa assumes the presidency for G20, but what's key about this is obviously the sentiments and decisions or discussions that come through, because this will also be taken to Washington when that meeting gets underway there. Tell us a little bit more about the importance and what we can expect on that front.
Right, so the G20 meetings obviously have been going on in South Africa as we prepare for the major event that we're expecting in November. But currently we are expecting that the ministers and finance ministers of various G20 countries will be meeting in Washington, D.C. For these meetings. We're expecting that Finance Minister Ngcobo, as well as Reserve Bank Governor Lesetja Kganyago, will be leading these conversations. And essentially this is about making sure that the G20 countries have a united front in terms of tackling the economic challenges that face the country, as well as some of the the economic challenges that face the country, as well as to ensure that they grow the economy. So essentially that's what it's all about. That's what the G20 meetings that are going on. They happen on the sidelines of the spring meetings. Of course, the World Bank, as well as the IMF, the International Monetary Forum, are hosting their annual spring meetings, and this is where we're going to see these G20 meetings happening.
Retailers having a little bit of a headache at this point. We've seen delays in legislation just regarding the zero-rated food items. Tell us a little bit more about that, particularly when the that's obviously set to come in at 15.5%.
Exactly. It is quite a headache because what we do understand is that VAT is going to increase. We are expecting a 15.5% increase. There's not going to be a change in that. We do continue to see some wranglings between the finance minister as well as the DA. There's been court processes that are happening. But what we do understand is that the VAT increase is going to happen. What is an issue is the fact that Parliament has not signed off on the zero-rated goods and food basket that is going to be exempt from this VAT hike. Essentially, you'll remember that the minister did make a pronouncement that, to cushion the impact on consumers, they would try and make sure that they have zero-rated goods in the food basket. But we have not seen that because Parliament has not set and really approved on this policy. We do know that this requires a change in the VAT Act, which is essentially in the rates bill. So until that we see that change, until we see a signing of Parliament, it remains confusing for retailers because they don't know what to include and what to exclude from this VAT.
Well, the clock is ticking, right? Because May 1st is obviously edging closer. But even just looking at the macro dynamics beyond our borders, there's trade tensions that's also happening. This is the backdrop that many markets and countries are trading against. Tell us a little bit more about the impact that's having on markets and how what we can expect on that front in terms of, U.S. tariffs and the ongoing tensions.
Well, tensions continue. I think everything is really dependent now on what Donald Trump says.
Yes.
Whatever it is he utters, that's what moves the markets these days. Obviously, with South Africa, we're not going to see much of a difference because, of course, we're having a holiday tomorrow, so our markets do remain closed. But on the U.S. front, a lot of U.S. companies, particularly tech companies, will be releasing their first quarter earnings. So I think that will give us an idea and gauge what the impact of tariffs has been really on the U.S. markets, particularly when it comes to U.S. stocks. What we do know that the rand has been taking a beating, but we are seeing somewhat of a recovery. We don't know how long that may last, so only really time will tell. The only winner really in this debacle has been the gold price. It's been performing exceptionally well. I think it's gone and even hit around $3,600 per ounce. So that's been very impressive. It has come down a little bit more. It's now $3,300. But, that's the only surety and that's the only improvement we've seen in terms of what's been happening on the global front. But we will be keeping our eye on markets going forward this week.
Onwards and upwards, Naledi. Thank you for your time at this hour and for weighing in. We're obviously looking forward to some of those big stories that we can expect on the economics front. Naledi Ngcobo, SABC News reporter, weighing in on some of the stories that we can look forward to.